How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Funnel Vision Show. I am very, very excited for my next guest because we are going to dive into a topic that many people struggle with, especially on the agency side when you're kind of selling services, and that is pricing. It's one of those topics where it's either you know how to price at these really big and juicy fees, or you get stuck in your own mind in terms of, I have to price hourly, I have to price at a low price point in order to get a client to say yes. And we're going to demystify that a lot today. And with me, I have Robin Waite, who is part of Fearless Business. And Robin is going to kind of walk us through how do we start charging what we are worth. He's a business coach. He's a keynote speaker. He's a best-selling author, and he knows a lot about this topic. Robin, thank you for being here.
Oh, Mikhail, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm not going to have like a fanboy moment. We've already done that off air, but yeah, big fan of Funalytics and what you do. So very excited about this conversation.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, please don't have any sort of fanboy moment. We'll just have fun and chat through. Look, for people who don't know you, I always like to do this for every single guest. I want you to give me your humble brag, or not so humble brag if you want to go down that path. But basically, what have you been able to do for your clients? What have you been able to do for your own business? In other words, why should people really kind of tune into this episode?
Yeah, so I've been in business for 20 years. And I know you're probably thinking I don't look old enough, but yeah, I started my first business way back in 2004, which was a marketing agency. So we primarily did web design and branding. And during the course of the 12 years, which I managed to build and then exit that agency, we went through probably just about every mistake that every business could go through. But during the latter sort of third of the last 4 years of the agency, we went through a really fast acceleration in terms of our pricing. So we were able to double and triple even some of the prices which we were charging for the work which we were doing. And I was very fortunate in 2016 when I woke up one morning and had a bit of an epiphany. I was between children and decided that I wanted to exit the agency. And I don't think there's many people that decide, we were only a small local agency here in the UK, so it wasn't huge. But I was able to find somebody who would buy the agency off me for a modest fee. And that gave me a couple of years worth of freedom to start to focus on the side of the business, which I enjoyed doing the most, which was I didn't realize it at the time. It's funny, when you run a marketing agency for 12 years, you think that the thing which you do, the marketing, is the most important thing. But the bit I loved the most was actually the consulting side of things, actually speaking to business owners about their business strategy, their growth, their turnover and income goals, profitability and things like that. And very quickly, when I jumped into coaching, I started off as more informal mentoring, but jumped into coaching. I found a strategy which meant that people could double their prices in as little as sort of 3 months. And in some cases, even more than that. We helped one client get to a point whereby they 10x their pricing in a very short space of time. So that's what I help clients to do now.
Okay, we're going to dive really deep into how you do that and what that playbook looks like. But before we do, walk me through a little bit of the journey in terms of, like, how did you uncover this? How did you kind of get to this point of I know I can help businesses with their pricing, and actually pricing is probably one of the biggest levers that all of these businesses have. Like, was there a tipping point? Was there a specific time or story or something that occurred that's like, oh man, I need to really focus on this?
Yeah, well, I got my first insight whilst I was still running the agency, and we weren't doing anything sort of particularly shiny or any kind of wizardry. It was just web design and branding, so it's very kind of plain sailing so far as marketing is concerned. But one of our design products, which I developed, it started out as being very traditional time for money based design, so logo design services. And you've probably experienced this or heard about this. A lot of agency owners certainly will be familiar with this. It's called design agency ping pong, where it starts off by client coming in asking you for you to design a logo. You then have this back and forth while you quote for it, and they haggle with you on the prices, and then eventually you agree to get started with the work. And our process at the time, it sounds a bit backward, but this is all part of the learning curve, isn't it? But we used to sort of go through this stage by stage process, and it could take anywhere up to 3 months by the time you've done all the back and forth to actually design a logo. But when I looked at my billable hours, we were only billing 10 hours at maybe $50 an hour at that particular point in time. So this is about 4 years into our agency, and perhaps I should have known a bit better sooner, but that's part of the process. But what we did, I just got really frustrated with it. I can tell our clients were really frustrated because it was such a long-winded process. And I thought, basically, there has to be a better way than this. We started to map out each of the steps in our process. And I worked out that there were 7 steps, which we went through with each and every client, from, going through and talking about core values, looking at the word association when you're creating a new brand. We went through a sketching sort of process, started to then map that out into an electronic version, added color. And so we had that process nailed. But that only reduced it by about half. It took our average delivery down to between about 4 to 6 weeks, on average. But we weren't billing anymore. And that was probably the most frustrating part of it. It's like we put all of this effort in and energy, and we had this great process, but we couldn't make any more money out of it, and we couldn't grow our agency at that particular point in time. And it got to a point, one day I just woke up, I was like, God, wouldn't it be great if we could do this in a day? So I came up with this concept of the 1-day logo design process, 1-day branding workshop with clients. And I'd had this bubbling around in my mind for a couple of weeks, and a client came in who we'd done some work with previously. And they said, hey, Rob, it was like a Thursday or something. We've got this new product we're launching on Tuesday, but we realized we don't have a good logo for it. Can you help us out? And I said, well, maybe. I think I could. I've got this idea. I haven't done it before. It's a 1-day branding workshop. If I can organize the designer, we can have you set up on Monday. We can just run this thing for a day, and then you'll have your logo finished up by the end of Monday, ready for to send out to the products team by Tuesday. And they said, yep, sounds perfect. Sign me up. How much does it cost? And I was like, oh, I hadn't even put any thought to that. So I just blurted out, £1,500. So at the time, that was about 3 times the price which we were charging for. And it very much fit into that time, quality, cost triangle, where you can have something done fast and well, but you're not going to have it done cheap. So I blurted that number out, and they said, great, send me your bank details. And by the end of that day, they'd actually transferred the money. So not only had we managed to charge 3 times the amount for basically doing the same service, but they paid in full in advance. So it was actually a double whammy of knowing in that moment, getting a bit of a snapshot into what is our true worth, but also when somebody really wants something, that they'll throw money at you and they won't really think twice about it.
Yeah, especially when there's that urgency that, we don't have a choice. We have to get this done. And we're in a time crunch. Then scarcity and urgency come in, and it's always, it's one of the biggest motivators, one of the biggest factors of getting people to actually take action. And price becomes a little less relevant because I don't have a choice. I've got to do this, right? So you kind of got this aha moment, this epiphany of like, man, what used to take me 3 months and only get 500 pounds now took me a day and got 1,500 pounds. And it's kind of, you've started to realize that, okay, faster is better for everybody. You can charge more because now you're actually doing it faster. People aren't judging it based on time. In fact, they want it to be faster. So walk me through over the, following years and following kind of what else evolved and how did you kind of come up with your playbook to help these businesses increase their fees?
Yeah, so there was a couple of other things which we sort of bolted onto that. So the next step after that, when we'd run that workshop, and it didn't go 100% according to plan. It was like we started quite early. We started at about 8 a.m. and we got them out the door by 7 p.m., but it worked. And gradually we sort of honed the process and got more efficient at it in that one day. I think we did about 40 of them in total. But one of the things which we did, we we took that product and we put it into a small 8-page brochure with a couple of upsells on it. So the upsells were like, again, very typical, like just traditional design products. So we did another one-day workshop, but that was based on like 2D design. So anything that was flat and printed, we'd essentially spend a day workshopping it and designing it for them. So like business cards, letterheaded paper. We used to do signage outside shops. We even did a vehicle wrap once as well, which was quite good fun to try and squeeze that into a day. And actually it worked with a little bit of finessing afterwards. And then we had a third day as well, which we used to do, which was a brochure design day. So we'd do an 8 to 12 page brochure, wireframe it up during the one-day workshop, and then we'd finish it off afterwards, because there tended to be quite a lot of finishing off with sort of getting layout and fonts and the text and all those things sorted out. But it's just one of those things that typically tends to happen by accident, I think, sometimes in business. You go, oh my God, that's so amazing. So I had a client in who said, we're quite interested in getting all 3 days done, but we're not sure, like, what do we need? And I said, well, actually, you need all 3 of these days. I said, one of the things I can do then. So we had the 3 products laid out next to each other, one by one. And then under it, we had like an option for them to sign and date the form and tick which products they wanted. And they ticked the box for option number 1. So they definitely wanted the one-day workshop. And I spun the brochure around and I said, listen, most of our clients go on to do days 2 and 3. So if you book all 3 days, we'll knock £250 off. And just without really thinking of it, because we'd kind of already priced that in, because we tripled our prices, and the client literally ticked box 2, ticked box 3. So we ended up doing close to £6,000 worth of business just on that almost. The closest I can get to it in online digital marketing terms these days is that one-click upsell. Literally, they tick the boxes, and we had 2 days worth of extra work booked. So that was a really fantastic learning. And then a couple of months after that had happened as well, and so all of a sudden, our revenue had kind of slowly been going up year by year. And in this particular year, we ended up going up 2.5 times, just because I was learning all of these things about pricing and how to sell rather than do proposals. Let's actually get into the habit of selling whilst the client sat in front of us. And I had one phone call. One of my mentors called me and said, oh, Robin, I've heard about your one-day branding workshop from another client. I've got a client in York. Could you drive up there tomorrow and deliver this? And oh, by the way, there's a team of 23 people waiting for you. And I was like, I live down in like the southwest of the UK. York's like about far north as you can go before you're in Scotland. And I was like, I don't want to drive all the way up there, even for like 1,500 quid. I was like, no, you're all right. Thanks, Nick. I'll take that another time, And he said, leave it with me. And he called me back about 15 minutes later, and he said, Rob, get yourself up there. I've booked this gig for you. They're transferring £18,000 into your bank account as we speak. And I was like, you're what? And literally, I checked my bank balance, and they transferred all of this money. I was already on the motorway on my way up to York, delivered this thing, and there were 23 people there. It was hard work because there were so many people in the room. So again, the rules of engagement changed, slightly, and that kind of does operate at the far end of the bell curve as well. It was like, we didn't get many projects of that sort of size because, like I said, small local agency. But again, it was a big learning that now we had this bandwidth between like £500 what we used to charge and £18,000 what was effectively for us the same service or product that we were selling.
Right, and it shows you. It really shows you the difference in perceived value as well, right? I remember, as an example as well, I was bidding on, when I was running my agency, I was bidding on a website, and my website was going to cost about $2,000 to do. Like I had it quoted and design, build, all of that stuff, about $2,000. And the person I was bidding, luckily, was a friend of mine, and is a very good friend of mine. But she was working. The company was about $100 million business, and they were selling to luxury. They were selling to high end luxury people and big companies and all that stuff. So what was interesting with that was I gave her a quote of like, okay, well, it's going to cost me $2,000. This is early days. I didn't know anything about pricing or anything. So I was like, let me charge her $5,000. Right. And she sent me the proposal back when I sent it to her. She's like, Mikkel, I need you to make this a minimum of $35,000. And I was like, but it's only like, you're my friend. It's only going to cost me 2,000. She's like, I don't care. The reality is, if they think they're buying a $5,000 website, they're going to feel bad showing that off to their clients, to our clients, because to them, they bought a cheap website. It doesn't matter whether it costs you two. They want to know that they bought this thing because the perceived value of this thing needs to be that, right? So their status of like, yeah, we spent $35,000 to build this website. That is more important to them than the fact that like you're going to make $33,000 in profit on this website, right? So it's kind of similar in the case of them, getting that whole workshop. It's like, for us, the perceived value is we want this logo. We want everybody to be on board. 18,000 pounds is, we know that it's really you're coming up here and it's only you. And you're, this is the most money you've ever made in a day, but it doesn't matter because it's not about you and it's not about that service. So walk me through, sorry, I just went on a little tangent there about a little lesson there, but walk me through, what is your playbook that you take people through? What does that playbook look like if you were to take it and turn it into a playbook to help people charge what they're worth, triple their prices in 3 months? Walk me through those steps. What does that playbook look like?
Yeah, I mean, so effectively, the process is called productizing a service. So there's quite a number of coaches now which are much more familiar with this, and the 3 steps are really quite simple actually. So you've got to throw hourly rates out the window, albeit you can always tie everything back to an effective hourly rate. You can take that 18,000 and divide it by how many hours it took me to drive up there, deliver it, stay in a hotel, whatever. But the 3 steps are effectively, first and foremost, you've got to figure out what the dream outcome is for the client. So in your case, if that was $35,000 to get a website which to them gave them the prestige that they bought this thing, and it made them feel, either good about themselves or that they knew they were going to probably get a good result from having that website there, irrespective whether it's 2 or 35K. That was their dream outcome for them. And that's what was most important. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make with their pricing is they base it on their own internal value system rather than based on and what they do, rather than the results which they actually get for their clients. So the results of the thing which they do. So first of all, we've got to identify what is the dream outcome you're delivering for your client. The second stage of productizing a service is then, can it be delivered over a fixed period of time? So in our case, it was like take a 3-month process down to like a 1-day branding workshop. And the idea was at the end of the day, client would walk away with an electronic version of their logo. And if they weren't happy, we would literally give them their money back. And there was only 2 out of about 40 of these, which we did in sort of the final couple of years, where we had question marks from clients over whether it would work or not. One was a legal trademark issue, which I'd spotted and I highlighted to them. And we actually worked at 4 different variations of the name of the product which they were designing, so that if one was trademarked, well, we'll just choose another logo. And so that actually happened. They were challenged, and so we just chose a different one. But the key thing is that whatever it is that you're promising to the client, that you can deliver it in a fixed period of time. And I'll come back to that in a second, because that's quite important as well. And then the final thing is, can you deliver it for a fixed fee? And the challenge is when you're selling hours, and if you want to make more money, then as a supplier, your goal then is to sell people more hours, irrespective of like what that entails, who it's for, and things like that. But imagine you as a web designer on day 1 versus you as a web designer on year 10, you're going to be better. You're going to do it faster. You're going to do it, it's going to be a better quality output. So you can't be charging hourly rates or a similar hourly rate from day 1 to year 10, because all of a sudden you lose value. You've got to sell loads more hours because you're more efficient at it. So we've got to make sure that it's for a fixed fee. And ideally, again, that's attached to the outcome, not based on the inputs, if that makes sense. But the interesting thing when it comes to that fixed period of time, the words I hear very often are, it depends. Well, it depends, Robin. We can't deliver it in that amount of time because it depends on the client. It depends on external circumstances or these other things happening. But what that tells me is that generally that means that agency or freelancer is doing too many things for too many different types of people. What they haven't done is created a systemized process that they can do on a repetitive basis. Because think of it this way: if the work which you do is for similar clients and it's the same product selling over and over and over again, you get really good at it. The results become much more predictable. You get the same results like time and time again. You get positive reviews and testimonials from your clients. But the thing which I think trips a lot of agencies up is this notion that they want this creativity, this creative like freedom to be able to explore and try out different things with different clients. But the client doesn't want that. Probably what it comes back to, especially in the business space, the client probably wants more leads or more sales, more revenue coming in. And so whatever it is that you're designing or delivering for them needs to kind of be focused on that. And actually what that means is that the most successful businesses that operate on productized services are actually really boring. And I think a lot of agency owners especially, they don't like that because it doesn't feed their ego. Boring businesses that aren't exciting, right? So why would they want to do it? But the most successful businesses that I've worked with now since I've sort of fallen into the coaching space, they're really boring businesses. They just get really good at doing the same thing over and over and over again for the same or similar clients.
Yeah, productizing that aspect is extremely important, because I think one of the things you just touched on is, when you productize and you get better at it, it means you become more efficient, which means that if you're selling hours, you're effectively reducing how much money you make. And I think most people don't conceptualize that, right? So the better you get at delivering a result to your client, the more efficient you become, which means the less time you're actually putting in, which means that if you're charging per hour, you're ultimately charging them less. And that doesn't make much sense. So I really appreciate those 3 points. I will add one more point that I think is extremely important for every agency to factor in is what is their dream desire, but also what is that dream desire worth? So if, for example, and usually it's based on acquiring customers for their business. If somebody, for example, their dream desire is like the business I helped with their website. Well, their dream desire is to have a beautiful website to showcase to their clients. Well, how much is a client worth? Well, for them, a client's worth minimum $100,000 a year. So now you sit there and say, well, does it make sense for us to build a website for $5,000 when this new website is going to showcase their services and they're going to close $100,000 a year business because of it? No, there has to be a ratio there. And it's very easy to go to a business and say, yeah, it's 35,000. One client, you make 100. It's a no-brainer in that sense, right? So I appreciate what you've touched on in terms of that, and thank you for that. We're coming up on time, but I like to give everybody one opportunity to share their number one growth tactic that you've experienced, that you've had, or that you could recommend. Basically, we're all marketers here. So we all love tactics, even though that's not always the best thing that we should be focused on. So tell me, what is your number one growth tactic as a marketer?
Yeah, so for me personally, partnerships, I probably discovered it about 18 and a half years later than I should have done or wanted to do to figure out in my career. But partnerships on podcasts especially have been incredibly productive for me. And to give a little bit of context, in the start of 2023, I got I just a bit fed up with the whole sort of guru-esque sort of thing in the coaching space around sort of 7-figure coaching businesses and social media this and having to post a gazillion times a day and the grind and the hustle and all that stuff. And again, similar to my branding days, I was like, got to do something like better than this. There has to be a better way. So I cut all of that out, all of my social media out altogether. And I made a short list of 10 people who I just loved, they were fun people I loved hanging out with, podcasters, especially in the YouTube space, because I was just fanatical about following these really cool people on YouTube. It just looked like fun what they were doing. Started showing up to their events and things like that. And then in June last year, so 6 months into this, and I'm not going to lie, because like I'd turned off a lot of my marketing, things started to decline. In terms of like number of leads that I was getting. But because of this focused intentionality around these people I was starting to hang out with, I got invited onto Ali Abdaal's Deep Dive podcast. If you don't know him, he's got 6 million subscribers on YouTube. He's got a brilliant channel all about productivity. But that one podcast interview, and bearing in mind, this is 6 months worth of focused effort, and this is my first foray into this partnership. I think it's now had 250,000 views, and it generated something like 3,000 leads and nearly £200,000 in business for my small but mighty coaching practice. That's just 1 2-hour interview. And again, to put this in context, for all of the social media stuff that I've been doing previously, to get 3,000 leads, when I looked back at my CRM, I think it had taken me about 4.5 years nearly. And that was just 1 2-hour interview that just equaled that and has got like surpassed it now. So, but the key thing is though, getting those opportunities is one thing. You've got to deliver as much value as you can when those opportunities arise, but you've also got to have like a really valuable marketing asset to kind of back it up. So I'm quite fortunate. I've got books, which I've written a couple of books over the years. So initially, Ali and I were just going to give away 15 like copies that we'd both signed, but just the leads kept on coming in. So I just kept sending the books out, and they've gone to all 4 corners of the globe, including Mongolia, which I just find absolutely like mental. But yeah, and the rest is history. I'm still getting leads from it, and that was just coming up for a year ago now.
Wow, yeah, partnerships is definitely an incredible growth tactic. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to put money up front. There's usually always a way to kind of make these partnerships work where everybody wins on the back end. And that's as a marketer, when your customer acquisition cost is 0, it's always nice, right? So I appreciate that tactic. Robin, I appreciate you being on the show and to sharing all of these insights. We went a little bit over time, but it was well worth it. You gave a lot of value. So, Robin, where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, so 2 things. LinkedIn, please jump on there and connect with me, send me a message. And also the same gift that I gave to all of Ali's friends as well, Mikhail, I'll offer to your amazing listeners as well. So they can get that at fearless.biz/TYS. If you want a free signed copy of my book, Take Your Shot, which talks about all the pricing principles we talked about, that's the place to go to get it.
Amazing. We will drop that link in the show notes as well so that people can get access to that. Thank you so much, Robin. I appreciate your time, and we'll chat soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.